immortal fantasies of the old world realms. No.
The old worlds.
Empires.
The old worlds of welcome to.
My original podcast title was 10 from the Back, which is a nice little segue. So
That's
why don't we get there? Maybe that could be the title of this episode, 10 from the Back. We'll see. We'll see. Again, shit, there I am giving it. It'll be what it is. It'll be what it is.
It'll be what it is. Okay, we don't know right now. It'll be what it is. We don't know what the name of the show is, but this show is to do with the old world. So that's what we're here for today. Me and Mr. Val Heffelfinger are going to be talking about the old world. And if you are watching this, then do like and subscribe and send this to your old world buddies. But probably your old world buddies who didn't play previously. Probably don't want the ones that played previously, to be honest. Just gonna say it out
Don't worry,
loud.
they're distracted. All those guys are distracted playing Horus Heresy right now, so you don't have to worry about them.
All right, good. Yeah, okay.
Nicky D. Williams, by the way, in chat, he was our table boss, not table producer, Rob.
Yeah.
And he gave me this.
Nicky Williams brought you a Storm of Magic book.
Yeah, and it's out of focus because of my privacy blur. But yes, he did, and it fully functioning, magnetized, one of the last piece of books that I didn't have in the collection. So this is wonderful.
All right, well, great. Okay, love that.
Still looking for that monstrous arcanum.
Still in my house. So if you want it, you can have it. I've told you this before.
And your luggage, by the way, is now making its way to Adam Camilleri. I paid it forward. So that case is now packed with an equally absurd amount of Warhammer of the 41st millennial variety on its way to Australia carried by a Australian plastic crack mule.
I love that.
And Adam Camilleri will one day open it. And also, I'm hoping maybe Adam can then send something to someone in the UK so it circumnavigates the world and you get your luggage back.
Perfect. For everyone, for context, I had a bunch of old Warhammer Fantasy Battle sculpts, a couple, 3 or 4, and then I packaged them up into a suitcase for Val when I went over last year and delivered the package. And now apparently that suitcase is now full of 40k going to Australia. Excellent. I love that. That's a nice journey. Yeah, a couple of bits in there.
Thing.
What was really funny is I just utterly forgot to pack Tamrakhan, who just ended up on a shelf in a bar. And I was like, I had to go to the bar the other day and be like, what, did I leave a big dragon here? And they were like...
like literally like the star of the show. So and then apparently you have dwarf some elves holding out on some elves. That you may or may not have. Monstrous Arcanum. I'm going to pony up just for some shipping. I have so much stuff. This entire place is a very fancy streamer garage sale. So I'm gonna get some money, give you some shipping fees, and we can get the rest of the collection in one house. So there you go.
I'm keen, mainly because I'm very interested in 3D printing a lot of the new stuff. That's just because I think there's some cool sculpts. That's what I'm going to say. I might dip in. But just to kind of start the show off, we don't know as of yet. So what's the point of today's show? We're going to We're going to look through the Empire. What were they called then? Codexes?
Army books.
Army book. Okay.
Yeah,
so we're going to look through the Empire Army book. We're going to talk about some stuff. If you did listen to one of our previous shows, we've done. This is our third. The first one is where Val gives us the history of how we ended up where we are, which is with a dead game system. In Games Workshop's mind, but a very alive community playing different versions of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. But with the release of the old world coming up from Games Workshop, this is our kind of like, let's just remind ourselves of what was going on, what was happening, what stuff like, and let's look through. So each week we're going to look through one of the army books. We might not even finish this today. We don't know. It's meant to be just a slow roll to get us kind of excited for the future, because I legitimately am excited about the setting. Excited about the setting, excited about the game system returning, to be honest. Looking forward to it. Like for me, so yes. Empire.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I've got ADHD. You're gonna have to hold on here, Rob. You're gonna have to keep this. You're gonna have to keep these horses pulling in the right direction. I almost started talking about the graphics card I just bought. Okay, continuing.
No problem. Right, yes. Dig out some old Winds of Magic cards. That's it. He's got the book. So I've only got the PDF. So when we're looking at it right now, I've only got the PDF. But Val's got the official book in hand. No. Well,
if you're gonna do the PDF, I guess PDF presents better. But also for those people who want to follow along at home, Write it down. WHFB.app, potentially the app of the year. And you can follow along there.
Warhammer Fantasy Battle app of the year.
www.whfb.app. That's right.
So you've read. So this is the 8th edition book, and I want to talk about a couple of things before, because I've done my research, just so you know. So here's a map when we're looking at Empire, roughly where they're based. Around here in the center. So obviously, podcast listeners, you won't be able to see the map. But if you've played Old World, or if you go look at some maps, you'll see.
Are you rocking Armies Project right now, or is this just a map?
This is just a map.
Okay. Gotcha.
But this map isn't going to be relevant for when we start talking about the Old World, because they're going back in time.
That is correct.
That is correct. Are you trying to work out where this map is from? I love how much of a nerd you are about this.
I am indeed. So yeah, we have the Counts of Sylvania. So like this is after Vampire Wars, I would gather. Which and then we have Hochland. We have Granberry. There's Nordland, so Nordland's there, and it looks like Marienburg has also the Republican of Westerland. Interesting.
Yeah, so and like Goblin Swamp says, for podcast listeners, just imagine a map of Europe. The Empire is Germany.
Pretty much.
The French knights to the east are Britannia. To the north, we have the Swedish, who are the horrible chaos warriors, and a little bit like to the kind of northeast. Oh, sorry, to the west is Britannia. To the northeast, you have the Russians, who are Kislev. And then to the direct east and southeast, you start getting into your vampires. Or is that Turkey? Is that what that area is?
The border princes and stuff?
Yeah.
No, I think you're starting to get down towards more like I guess like Turkey, Greece, the Balkans, like sort of like that transition between Asia, Africa, and Europe. That's sort of what you're getting into down there.
Yeah. Okay. So that's roughly where we are. So when we do talk about the Empire, we're talking Turkey, but we're also talking Germany. That's what we're talking, right?
Yeah, essentially. So yeah, if you look, there's no real Mediterranean Sea. I guess that's kind of one of the big differences between real Europe and this Europe. Is that there is no Mediterranean. So the Badlands, which are just south of the border princes, that's where like Tomb Kings live and Savage Orcs and stuff like that. The border princes are just sort of a wild card area of ne'er-do-wells next to Estalia and Tilea, which would be your Spain and Italy proxies. And then to the north of them, the French in Britannia. And then, of course, as you mentioned, Empire in Germany, Kislev, Russia.
Who are the English in this?
The English exist as Albion, and they are kind of like Druish. So like they're not even really Celtic. They're just sort of like, I don't know, whoever built Stonehenge. So yeah, Albion is England, and but I mean, as we all know, a little thing called 1066 happened. So Britannia is actually the English.
That's true.
Don't know if you guys know this, but your royal family speaks French, and more recently, just German. So good on you.
Yeah, they do. I mean, I don't care. It doesn't bother me. Savage Druids who half got tricked into worshipping Albion. Oh, good point. Okay. Just what we need, a Druish princess. We don't need any of that, do we? Right?
Spaceballs.
Yeah, so these initial books. So
by the way, I'm literally nerve-wracked right now. I feel like I'm Indiana Jones going through the trials of the Last Crusade, because I can't believe I knew that Albion was the correct answer for where England is, and I'm popping off right now. I'm seeing the Matrix. Let's go.
You're in. Okay, all right.
This is lore shit, guys. This is not usually my bag. Okay. Warhammer, lots of hours in Warhammer 2 Total War also help.
They do. I mean, I was potentially going to load that up and then just take trips across it.
That's a great idea.
Which we could do on another show. I thought would be very fun. Okay. So yeah, the 8th edition. So if you listen to the previous show, 8th edition army book in the Empire. So they got a book in the last edition. So this is the best version. Although there were later army books, obviously. I think the last one was either Wood Elves or Dark Elves.
Final release was Wood Elves.
Wood elves. Okay.
and then end times books. But yeah, what else?
Yeah, wood elves. So this is like a kind of a version of a book that we may see return in the future, like this kind of style. Did it have any sort of formatting? Were those like 8th edition books? Were they in like a format that like made sense? You know, did it have like because looking at this here, you know, there's like the lore.
100%.
Oh, okay.
Worst book, the worst book to ever actually have to use. Another pro tip: go to the Facebook group Warhammer Fantasy Battles 8.1 edition or 8.5, and there's a person who unfucks all of these, so makes them so. Should I not cuss so explicitly? Anyway, basically you have this is how 40k used to be done. I don't know how if they do it in AOS, but you have like a nice fun page about fluff. And then for whatever reason, whatever special rules they have, and then nothing else. For everything else, you got to go all the way to the back to the, I guess, the army list section where you only have the options that a unit has and their points, but you don't have any of their rules. So to know what... So you basically wind up with your rules split between two very separate places, and it is frustrating as all hell to use these books.
I would say though, like in many ways, because obviously, like I've been looking a lot at Necromunda recently. Obviously, I've been looking at Age of Sigmar, and we've seen 40k. We've seen a bunch of people kind of like, well, they've seen Games Workshop, sorry, at least, try to present rules for their units. I would say that this army book and this generation of army books were one of my favorites because, ultimately, like this had a little bit of enough kind of crunch in the rules that, like, I got it. I was kind of like, oh, there's like 4 wounds each on this, or they're toughness 4, or whatever it was. But then that page, as Val's showing on the screen, which is like all of the additional things that you could get, felt like a kind of like an Aladdin's cave that you could go into after. So you would read about like the fire wizard, and then you go at the back and you're like, ooh, heavy armor, ooh, like it was quite excited to go there because I think that they should present each unit, and I think one of the things I like most about this, I don't know how you feel about it, is that they present these units with like all of this narrative. And it's not completely independent from the rules in some ways. Like
I see what you're saying. I just think there's no reason why you couldn't just have it all in one place or duplicate it.
Yeah, I would duplicate the special rules.
Like that's where they got to, right? With war scrolls and data slates, is they essentially have they have a blurb like flavor text, a la magic card, and then they have, your stat lines and your rules. And they put them all, shockingly, in one place, which I think, dare to dream. That's maybe we'll see that kind of design. I don't really see why you need the flippy back and forthy so much. It is a frustrating user experience. So but this is an era of Games Workshop design where they don't care about you. So that would be probably the most major gripe. Aside from that, everything you just said, absolutely, dude. Like these pages are just covered in beautiful color, lovely illustrations. Although the people at the time were critical of the quality of the art. I don't know why. I guess the black and white lithographs from previous editions were prettier somehow. Like all of the hallmarks of what we come to expect from the books that Games Workshop publishes are present here, and this is sort of their first crack at it. But I think they're really gorgeous. Lovely things to have nearby, handy if you just want to sit and daydream. That's what I think an army book is all about. Fundamentally, I think these pages, the ones with the flavor text, the picture, and maybe a little taste of rules, that's all an army book should be. I think, like, as far as a functioning game-playing document, points and stat lines and all that kind of stuff should be nowhere near the book. That should be a different reference. This is for firing off your imagination, understanding the lore and culture of the faction that you're really super interested in, sitting around daydreaming in your favorite chair, petting your dog, and wishing you could buy more toys. That's what an army book is for.
I agree. I agree massively. Like in this, for instance, there's like a half-page spread on a warrior priest, and sure, there's just like a single miniature. And in modern books, obviously I play a lot of Age of Sigmar, and the modern books, they do have these kind of sections where they go through all the different units, but they're not quite presented as like maybe as formally like this. It feels more like a bestiary, which has always been one of those things that I think is actually very, very cool about how these are presented, and I've really liked them. Which like
Keep going.
Yeah, I'll keep going. I'll talk to the chat about it. Brilliant arm with these books was like browsing the Argos catalog as a kid. I agree. I often think that the back and forth nature sometimes is a problem, like he said. But then I guess some books came out every 3 or 4 years. I don't think that this is overly difficult or challenging to produce these books. There we go. You have the Heraldry of the Empire book.
Uniforms and Heraldry of the Empire. Now, I got the PDF of this too, if you want to fire it up. But like, this to me is actually what an army book should be. Right.
Okay.
So this is literally just pictures and information and knowledge of what the Empire is all about. Like, if you get into historicals, there'll be a book about this for the Norman conquest armies, like of William the Conqueror, right? Like there will be, you would have this sort of apes historical setting so that you can get in there and like really nail your, uniforms and heraldry. So it's a really beautiful book. They made 3 of these from what I understand. There's one for Skaven, one for Empire,
High Elves,
and one for the High Elves. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, I remember walking into the GW store, actually Warhammer World itself once, talking to one of the shopkeepers, as I think they're called, and we chatted, and I was like,
poor whelps.
Yeah, and I was like, who the fuck are you selling the unit banners and heraldry of the High Elves to? And he's like, you should meet them. They're the best people. And I was like, and Tom in the chat said it was me. I was the one selling. They were selling it too. I miss this very much. Yeah, I think that these are like not rose tinted spectacles. I think these are better books than the versions of the books that we potentially get at the moment. But and there's some sort of mythos there. But there we go.
Yeah.
Maybe they're more functional now. I don't necessarily agree. Like, we have the Path to Glory and Crusade stuff in the middle, which takes up huge portions of the book, which I don't give a fuck about. But some people love them. So there we go.
I would say, and like, especially from like putting on the old world tinted glasses, you have, the Forge World Studio. I don't even know really what that means anymore. But you have the Forge World Studio working on this. And what are they known for? They're known for very big, ornate books that sort of, meander and are just fun things to get lost in. So like, they have fidelity. Like, I think you determined some 1,000+ pages of content has been released for Necromunda. Well, I think that this is a great example of a world that they could also just release endless amounts of volumes on, and each page being a lot of fun to just savor and look at.
Yeah, I think they're excellent. So should we go through this a little bit?
Sure.
And then I think so, because obviously none of these rules are going to be overly relevant. I think, but I think it might be quite interesting to talk about something as simple as the units and maybe the upgrades, and because we might see that return. We might. Go on.
So there's a couple things that'll probably, like, if we want to put our old world hats, do we want to be a speculative podcast? Because there's the games design, right? So that would be like, what are the rules and mechanics that make Empire? Like, and what are the unit styles, right? And then there's also the constraint of the time period, because the time period that old world's going to be part of is like a very important moment in the Empire, and it's actually kind of the birth of what in the timeline would be the modern Empire. So like, they have like this is the era when either it's, we don't know yet for sure, but based on the maps that we've seen, the assumption is it's right around the Vampire Wars. So like, we haven't seen Sylvania like splinter off. Manfred hasn't like risen up. It might be that also puts it at the time of the like a period of civil war, very heresy-esque. And it's also because it's at that timeline. It's before the Emperor Pius the whatever. And that means that there is no colleges of magic, which are massive in the Empire Army book as it stands here. Even things like steam tanks and Hellblaster volley guns and like the newer technologies. I'm not sure, where they fall on like when humans actually get their grubby little mitts on them. So the Empire Army actually based on the timeline, could actually play and look very different than you would see it in like the original fantasy final form.
All right, well, why don't we go? I was thinking this is why I thought it would be good for everyone at home is because some people like we could talk about how they mechanically work a bit, maybe, but I think that going into a new game system, we got no concept if any of that's going to carry through in a lot of ways. So I more thought what we could do is roughly talk about what the units were and what their what their role was in an army at that time, and then we touch on mechanics as we went through, and then probably whether or not we would end up with those things in the future, like, you know, steam tanks you alluded to, like, will we likely see steam tank? What were they like? Are there some funny stories? You know, stuff like that. Especially when some of it, like, because this is a more modern book of the series of Warhammer Fantasy books. Especially when you go back to the ludicrousness of, like, you know, Skaven or Bretonnia, and you're like, well, it had a playstyle because it was literally stupidly written and a billion years old. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, Skaven weren't so bad, but Bretonian, Beastman, yeah, definitely. I would say just if I could, I know you're resisting this, so I'll be brief if I can.
Yeah.
Because there is so this is still Games Workshop, and this is the human faction, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
correct.
I think that they do humans the same way pretty much always, and this is just based on what I've seen, like Cities of Sigmar. Cities of Sigmar army looks a lot like an 8th edition fantasy battle army in a lot of ways. They have, big units of dudes buffed by, things with area of effect. If you look at Imperial Guard, that's exactly how it works too. You have a bunch of Imperial Guardsmen. They're a bunch of dudes. They don't do anything. But if they have an officer yelling at them, or if they have a dude on a mechanical horse nearby, they become super soldiers. In fantasy, similar concept. They'll have just regular dudes, but they can be buffed by both righteous zeal of their religious leaders or magic. So those are the things I think that we'll probably see. You'll see normal dudes, but the Empire will have access to ways to make their normal dudes really powerful. That would be my bet.
Yeah,
and then they have all the toys too, right? They'll have guns and artillery and that kind of stuff.
I think you'll also I think maybe we'll touch on it maybe later. I'm not sure, but I think we smart of them, in my personal opinion, to probably have city-based unique troops of some sort. Like something that's like a little bit more. This city definitely has this individual type of handgunner or bowman or knight. Or infantry that's just different, like they'll like the Marienburg handgunners, let's say, or swordsmen. So I think
like your sub-faction rules, so that like null, because like people get really attached to their city-state, right? Like I bought a secondhand army from Nordland. I didn't know what Nordland was. I started reading about it. Like I love the shit out of Nordland now for some reason, and I love I love Marienburg. And then I bought a second army that's like much better and fleshed out. It's from Stirland. But because I started from a Nordland Marienburg perspective, I hate that army. They're a bunch of stupid backwater bumpkins covered in mud and feces because they're just lowland farmers. So, now I've got this competitive army filled with bumpkins. And that's disappointing for me. But, as it is. But yes, I hope you're right. I hope they do allow for some flavor between. And that's another reason why, by the way, 6th edition is very beloved, because they did do stuff like that with custom army lists.
Is that what they did in 6th edition?
So yeah, you could have like a Nuln artillery army. Like they were thinking, basically, because 6th edition you used a force org, so like you had to take like 3 units of infantry or whatever they called them, troops, and then that unlocked the ability to bring the heavy items or the rare and the special and the lords and the heroes. And then when you got to 8th edition, now you had to take a percentage in troops. So that means you couldn't bring 3 minimum-sized units of dudes so that you can get all your fancy stuff. You had to spend a quarter of your army list on just rank-and-file dudes. So that was the big difference. But whereas because you had fun force org charts in 6th edition and 7th edition, it meant that you could have an all-slayers army. You could have the Nuln army. And like there were all these things that were released in various compendiums and anthologies and White Dwarfs and stuff that gave you sort of fun, specific faction feels for different things. Okay. So maybe they'll bring that back, because that's certainly one of the things that I think people really love about 6th.
Well, I think that's very exciting, especially for them painters out there that love to do a little bit of heraldry. Ooh,
Right?
do you want your pantaloons to be a red and white, or are you more of a green and yellow fella? Like
I'm more of a yellow and blue baby, Nordland all the way.
yellow and blue. Actually, I don't know what color scheme I choose. I oft go for orange. I'm looking at Hockland right now, which is very green.
Yeah.
But like these are almost like Harlequin levels of complexity in some ways on the paint schemes.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's ultimately it's sort of that Renaissance fair timeline. Something I'd love to see actually in the design of the new models is just some flagrant cod pieces. Because this, in real history terms, this is the era of the comically large cod piece, just big old dildo in your pants, going to battle with a boner. It would be great if all members, like all the highest ranking officials of the empire, just had huge cocks, and like ornately carved with like brass filigree. Like it'd be sick.
Can I tell you something that made me really pine a little bit for the old world? It was when I was in Quebec. Quebec. I was up obviously in Montreal, and they have in front of their big cathedral. They have a settler, a conquistador. I don't know what you guys had, but some Frenchie.
Habitant.
Yeah, but some Frenchie in a hat with a big feather, some pantaloons, and an absolute swashbuckling attitude. I looked at that and I thought, the old world's really cool. Obviously not the actual real life European old world, because it's obviously horrible. But like that style, and I was like, heck yes. So I could be very tempted by getting into I'm as we know an old Warhammer Fantasy Battle fan. So Chaos Dwarfs, yes. Lizard Men, yes. Empire, probably yes.
Dude, the problem with fantasy is that they're all yeses. Like it's messed up actually how few factions I don't have at least some desire to collect and play. It's wild. Like I think maybe I don't know. Like I would have said High Elves, Dark Elves, but like ever since I got your Dark Elves, like I'm thinking of is like how do I get more hags? How do I scheme myself some more Hydras? And I just talk myself out of buying used models all the time because I'm like, no,
stop it,
stop it. And because there's only like I don't know 18 factions, excuse me, and the army rosters are fairly tight, very comparable, probably to AOS. It's tremendously collectible. Like the entire roster of units for all of Fantasy. This probably isn't even a joke. It's probably close to what they have available for Space Marines.
Wow.
Like, you know what I mean? Like the amount of different model kits you could buy for that feature a Power Armor Space Marine.
It's over 100 now.
Or it's over 100. So like, how many kits do you have in Fantasy? Period. Probably not that much more. So anyway, it's really collectible, and I can see why you would immediately start sliding into. Oh, I could collect that. Oh yeah, I could have it ever like that. Yeah. In fact, you already had. Then you shipped it in a box to me.
Well, yeah, that's not a problem. I can just print the rest. That's fine.
That's fair. Fair.
Okay, so let's talk through the Empire Codex. So this was the faction, right? So Army Book, sorry. This was the these are the guys. These are the main story setters, right? Like this was obviously there were other. Do you think that I feel like Empire were kind of like the central point around what the game was orientated. They were the sun to the planets of the other factions.
Yeah, they're definitely the gravity of the whole thing because they're the first person perspective for us humans in the world. Even though there are lots of other human factions out there, we can't possibly relate to the proxy Chinese faction, for example. That would be too far.
How can we emotionally connect?
Or a bunch of Italians. Come on. The Spanish, they're sleeping all the time. No. We need the industrious Germanic people.
And only them.
And only them. So yeah, for whatever reason, they are the gravity center of the world. And this is actually kind of an interesting thing that, again, side segue. Coming into the old world, we have a whole different sort of setup because, legend, like kind of like how in 40K there's stuff that's sort of legendary, and you can like there's a fog of reality about it. So like you get historical facts in 40K that are just sort of misrecorded, or like they're not really known to the people in the setting. And I think the same thing applies in fantasy. So our perspective was that of the Empire, to whom places like Cathay on the other side of the planet were just sort of legendary, or like Skaven were, potentially something that you could pretend weren't real. So like, that from that perspective, there's a very foggy sort of world out there that is not known to you. But now, because we have, what the hell is it called? What's the third one? Mighty Empires, Immortal Empires in Total War, which is the entire, just about, map of the old world planet, which does feature places like Cathay and has a space for Ind and Nippon.
You really didn't want to say Nippon, did you?
Nipple.
Nippon. Nippon. Okay, that's our first emote. Our first emote is Nippon.
Is Nippon.
For the show.
And what are you going to choose to be the Nippon emote? Let's be careful there, all right?
This is a really chilly person. In England,
yes.
you've got a Nippon if you're cold.
Oh, you got a Nippon. Is that because your nipples are hard?
Yes.
Or is it just that you have a nip
I've got a
on?
Nippon, is what you would say in England. Yes.
So anyway, the reason why I'm digressing this savagely is just that, like, the world, since the game ended, has gotten bigger and more defined. And these are places that are, now have, like, real characters to them. And immediately I'm like, well, what the fuck were they doing when the whole thing was blowing up? Like, where were these dragon guys?
What were they about while the world ended?
What were you doing, guys? Like, come on, what were you doing during the war? There's lots of coolness, and there's a lot more space. Which, again, digression on digression, one of the things that they say killed the old world is that there wasn't enough creative space.
Oh my God.
It didn't have any places they could go with the story all the time. This is the official line, and Peachy and his, like, why did they kill Warhammer Fantasy on his channel talks about how
the
there
painting
just wasn't
phase,
enough.
if you'd like to go watch it.
Yeah, it's perfectly good. But what it is it's the party line on why this happened. Yeah. And the party line is that they were too constricted by one planet. They wanted to be able to just create freely. No. And this is absurd, of course, because that's like saying the history of planet Earth is not enough space to come up with fun and interesting stories.
And all of its peoples and all of its mythology.
And all forever and all time. Sorry, it's too constricted.
How dare you? They did 7 different German human factions, right?
That's a box. So anyway, so now I think conclusively, Creative Assembly, and also the guys who do the RPG. So who's that? Is that Fantasy Flight Games?
It used to be Fantasy Flight. Is it Modifius?
I'm not sure. Anyway, they're still being created, and the lore has been moving forward in that particular area, or being fleshed out. So, like, the world. Thank you. So the world is a much bigger place than it was when they blew it up because it was too small. Ironically. So I digress and I digress and I digress. We were talking Empire units, I believe.
No. I think that's all wildly relevant, and absolutely love having you on. Yeah, like the I think that there's a lot of room for this, to grow.
Too small. This planet is small.
It's so small. I've got nothing, but it has already massively grown. I love playing Immortal Empires on. I know where everywhere is in the old world now from having played Immortal Empires, and I think that actually gives it
Immortal Empires, you say?
Oh, look at my new graphics card ready to play.
It's not working. All right,
okay, so let's talk about this. Let's talk about the units that we find. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. Okay, before we talk about anything else, if you've never played Warhammer Fantasy Battle,
we're peeking these guys.
Yeah. If you've never
edging them.
Yeah, we're edging them. If you've never played Warhammer Fantasy Battle, then one of the things that happens, and we'll talk about a lot, is that you could take upgrades. So, like 40k, 40k's kind of got this. You can pay for, like, weapons upgrades. Doesn't really happen in Age of Sigmar. You can pay for armor upgrades. You can pay for artifacts. You can pay for all manner of things in this, which I really liked. Like, it was complicated, sure. But it was quite fun, and it added some validity when you purchased a thing. Like if you were like, going to put full plate armor on this guy, it's important. Need that. Barding on a war horse, you got it. Like it felt real, especially when you then combine that obviously with the miniature itself. Yeah, you're like, excuse me, your horse doesn't have barding, so throwing you out the tournament, and I'm going to burn your army. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. Yeah.
So to give some context too, like so in 8th edition they shifted a lot of, and this is similar again to the design philosophy of the company at the time. You see this in 7th edition as well in the army books. You had tremendous granularity in like special artifacts and things that you could take in the books, and they took those out and they made them genericized and they put them in the core rule book. So the army, the magical items, banners, and stuff like that were available to everyone was much more comprehensive. And then they added a few pages for flavor into each and every book, which from a designing perspective, I can see being much easier to deal with and understandable move. However, pissed everyone right the fuck off because now they lost all their flavor. You know, you don't have all of your billion
really?
different...
I quite like the generic artifacts. I like which is kind of weird because I think they're very tough to balance. But I think having something like the Dispel Scroll was like, okay, they're strong, but I get a Dispel Scroll. That's great.
100%, right? And that's why. So I guess there's a pro and con, right? Because like either everyone has to have a dispel scroll in their book, or like one faction doesn't. And they're like, what the fuck, you know? Like, or they give it to everybody, and then how does that make, for example, other armies more powerful, right? So it's kind of it's a tough thing to judge, but I do think that it's more manageable if you come into it table stakes, everyone has to deal with these particular interactions. But so this list of artifacts, all I'm saying, yes, it's fun and flavorful, Rob, but there's apparently a lot more in the world of 6th and 7th edition books.
Okay, I like that.
You see this complaint very, very strongly put forward, especially with vampire counts, because you lose all of the bloodlines and stuff like that.
The key element that I liked, because this is important, because in Age of Sigmar right now, there are a bunch of generic artifacts, as there are in 40k, like a warlord trait or a relic. They normally are limited in how much you can take, like because you play CP or you artifact or whatever. Like your ability to take them is limited and reduced, but their cost is always the same, and that artificially, in my opinion, cheapens the whole process. I quite like that the magic carpet is 50 points, 100 points, whichever it was. Like I liked that element because I was like, wow, that is it's pretty cool. A magic carpet, that's a lot of points. That's 50 Skaven slaves worth of magic carpet.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and go on.
No, it's just there was all kinds of stuff like that, right? And you did pay, and like I guess that's the thing is like they move after this time from paying for things and trying to like assign points values to benefits to just giving it away for free because I guess they got frustrated. So like you got like the era of free rules is not yet. So this is not yet the era, and you see it in the end time. So in the end time, they start adding in what were known as formations. I don't know what they were called in fantasy, but basically, if you take these particular units, you get these extra rules.
Battalions.
And that maybe that's exactly what it is. And then there's different army lists that they do as well in the end time. So you get that sort of free rule mentality. But at this time, it's if you want something, you got to pay for it, and then of course that opens up the issue of things that are too efficient or very efficient, and there's the auto takes. And ultimately, if you have a list of choices and they're of unequal quality, there's going to be a best choice. And so that's what you start seeing. You see the fact that you never see any arcane items other than a dispel scroll, right? Like there's certain things that just are pretty much always in an army. And as far as these particular items are concerned, you're not going to see a grenade launching blunderbuss or really any of the engineers' special weapons, despite how cool and flavorful they might seem. But you will see a couple of the banners, and that's essentially it. And meteoric iron. There is an armor that works. The rune fang. Okay, there's a handful of stuff. All right, there's a handful of things that you definitely would take out of this book from a artifact perspective.
Yeah, I actually like the point. I like points value on them because I think you actually, if in the next version they put that in, you can balance them better. You're like, okay, everyone's taking this, then we'll put the points up. That seems more reasonable than a system where you can't ever like do that, right? You would
Yeah.
have to just change the rules on each one every time, which I think makes it like very fun. By the way, thank you very much to like Dadbod for donating a gift subscription in the chat. Also, someone's pointed out, of course, that you did have save points. That if you were to take a bunch of halberdiers, let's say, and you wanted that to be led by a champion who normally had better leadership, you would have to pay the points for that. And then a banner guy, same thing, and a musician, same thing. And they normally were worth it, but it was super cool, in my personal opinion. Right? I quite like that.
Jeff Brown also brings up a really interesting wrinkle of this era, which is that army lists were secret. So you did not reveal to your opponent who had what items. So it was always a surprise, you were talking about how like there wasn't a game that you have ever played where you just like it was such a waste of time sometimes, where you just like walked up and like you just lose. And like it's interesting that they built in this era a lot of like gotcha hammer mechanics on purpose. And I guess, like, for example, I lost a game in the only tournament I've been to against Skaven because I didn't know enough about the obvious choices Skaven would take and what that would do for their units. So like had I had one other game against Skaven, I would have known probably to a rat which ones had which items. So like the like secret item thing wouldn't have mattered. But because there was secret items, and on top of that, I was ignorant of what the items could be, like he got like tremendous advantage over me. And like I wound up losing, not only because of that, but largely because of that. So anyway, it's an interesting mechanic that I think for two advanced players adds a deal of like a bit of like cloak and dagger subterfuge, like will he, won't he, did he, didn't he type stuff. You have a bluffing mechanic built in, but if you have uneven knowledge, it's just feel bad all the way.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I think I forgot that, or did not know that, or I just told people. I don't remember which.
Some tournaments, I would suspect some tournaments didn't play with closed lists, but by the rule book, it would be a secret list. And there's a lot of items actually that like force you to reveal things, or like like your opponent like has to tell you who has what and shit like that. And spells, there's a few spells that'll do that. So yeah, it's something that was definitely part of the design of the game, but I think probably at a tournament level, because of the rage-inducing table flipping and the like possibility that maybe your like guy who had this item, in fact, just magically was, in fact, this guy has this item, not that guy. No, the guy with the brown staff, not the black staff. So there's a lot of room there for shitty people.
Not return.
Yeah, me too.
No return on that. That's good. So we've talked about upgrades a little bit. Maybe another show we can just go through literally the generic core rulebook for 8th, and we could talk about artifacts, spell lore. We could do a whole show on the spell lore tier list when. We'll do that at some point. It could be fun. But yeah, you see a bunch of Empire stuff here. You can see full plate armor. Gives you a 4-up armor save, so you can equip that on people. There are things like repeater. But again, the elements aren't that important. A grenade launching blunderbuss can be equipped to someone potentially, which is quite cool. I think I remember doing a lot of full plate armor on people. That was something I took. And also pigeon bombs.
I don't think anyone ever took a pigeon bomb, buddy.
No one took a pigeon bomb, buddy. But everyone wanted to take a pigeon bomb. Come on.
That's every single thing, and it's like 2 page, like at least a solid page anyway. Of like, so they have the Imperial Engineers, and they have a bunch of like fun like James Bond Q style weapons, including a mechanical horse. Who wrote it better? The answer: the Imperial Engineer. Well, fun things like the Hochland Long Rifle. Which is something that just sort of goes away, like my screen. There, it's back. Good. They had mechanical steeds, pigeon bombs, repeater handguns. That one you might see. The repeater pistol. There's just so many fun things, and a lot of them just wouldn't have been used.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. Lots of fun stuff. All right, so let's just jump straight into it. So our first unit is the generic. So you had named characters in the game, and you had the generic characters. And the first one was the Commander of the Empire. So, again, slightly different to kind of modern games, or maybe not quite, but you had Lords and Heroes. So Lords were different to a hero. They just generally had a better stat profile, effectively.
Yes.
They also had more of a points allowance that they could spend on upgrades as well.
Usually, yeah.
And so, your commander of the empire is a lord of the empire, so like slightly better. The lord and hero system, did that get introduced? Do you know when and where that got introduced into the game system? And do you think we'll see that whole system return, lords and heroes?
I think Lords and Heroes existed in 6th, but again, it was a Force org chart thing. Whereas in 8th edition, it comes down to a percentage. So before the end times, you could have up to 25% of your army as lords and 25% of your army as heroes, I think. I don't think it's combined. So that meant in a 2,400 point game, you could have up to 600 points on your lords. And or heroes? Anyway, doesn't matter. The thing that happens in the end time is they increase that to 50%. So that allows you to bring, because the thing is like in 6th and 7th edition, I don't know why, but there's also a weird cultural thing against special characters. This is a thing in Warhammer. I don't know if it was just like that they were sort of taboo because they're supposed to be rare, and like everyone was supposed to be role playing just a random battle. So why is like Nagash and like, I don't know, Archaon at every engagement? You know what I mean? Like, so for whatever reason, like Warhammer resisted special characters, and so in 8th edition they were punished because they, for the most part, were overpointed. So almost either literally impossible to take because they would be more than 600 points in the case of a lot of guys, or they were just way too pricey, with the exception of every book will have a few standout special characters that were, worthwhile considering or taking. But like the biggest guys, like the ones that are like on the cover, on their favorite dragon or mount, generally speaking, just never saw play because they were too pricey from a points perspective.
Yep.
What you always generally saw in 8th edition, though, if your army had the ability to get it, was a level 4 wizard.
Which meant it could cast 4 spells.
Cast 4 spells, had the best opportunity to dispel as a result, was able to carry more items, therefore was able to bring some more of the stuff along with them. Was just a reliable casting powerhouse, and you kind of just always needed one. And generally speaking, one of your heroes was also going to be a wizard too, so that they could be your scroll caddy to bring a dispel scroll. With Empire, I don't think you would see many armies that didn't feature, at least one battle wizard, so a wizard lord level 4 of some kind. And then after that, you're probably looking at Arc Lectors on the War Altar of Sigmar because of his buffing abilities and just like so friggin' awesome. But yeah, that would be you probably don't see just a run-of-the-mill general of the Empire very often. They're probably not really a peak choice. They got the hold the line rule, some neat things. You're more likely to probably see instead, if you wanted like a beat stick dude, one of the leaders of the Knights, like Templar, what are they called? Chapter Masters. I think they're Chapter Masters. So like you're more likely to see one of those guys when you're building the knightly or Grandmaster. There you go. When you're building like if you wanted to build a beat stick Empire character, you're probably going to be reaching for you're going to reach for a Grandmaster. So the guys who lead the mounted knights of the Empire.
Yeah, and so and again, important point. Although we'll go through each in order. Important point maybe for the commander of the Empire. Like, unfortunately for him, that level 4, like spellcasting was so strong in at least in 8th edition.
Crucial as well.
Crucial and strong. That being a part of that, like not taking part in what is effectively rolling 6 dice and winning the game element of the game, feels like you're really handicapping yourself from not being a part of it. So you generally wouldn't see it. And if you're spending points on a lord who's a wizard and you almost have to do it, you're probably not going to get the commander of the Empire. Although I want to point out, badass sculpt, the commander of the Empire.
There's probably a number of different models you can use. He's a bit of the Primarius Lieutenant of Warhammer models, so there are a lot of different options that you could use for him, including a plastic kit.
Yeah.
And others. The one that you'll see almost virtually always is the Captain of the Empire, rather than the Commander of the Empire. Because the other thing is even if you don't go magic heavy with a battle wizard, the Empire have their priests. So you have the Arc Lector, who's their big time priest, and they have access to prayers, which work like spells, but have a lot of benefits, like they never miscast, so they never explode, or kill yourself. They're not as good at fighting stuff, but they buff significantly dudes around them. And so they are really outstanding choices at either the Lord level and certainly also at the hero level. But basically, the Commander of the Empire, unless you have a real specific reason for wanting to bring one of those guys, maybe you want to role play an Electrocount or something, there's really no reason to bring one.
I love the idea that they're role playing. Let's go straight away. I am an Electrocount.
Yes, some of the Electrocounts.
Some of them. Okay, so then they would have then, like you said, there were loads of different sculpts, and I think that's very viable. I wouldn't mind seeing the spellcasting drawn back, and maybe the on foot characters a little bit more heroic. But ultimately, your regular human dude attempting to go up against a vampire was never going to work out for him.
But he might be kitted out, right? He might have the right magic with him, like items wise, right? Like there's lots of ways a human being can take on a vampire. We've covered them. Garlic, wooden stakes through the chest. I mean, there's things that you can do here. We've all seen Van Helsing. Also, something to bear in mind too, from a magic perspective, is that the world at this from the old world, the world is less magical, literally. So the winds of magic sort of flow through this polar vortex, and they sort of ebb and flow over the years. That's what this expansion, basically fantasy apocalypse, is all about. It's about a series of years where the winds of magic blow strong, and they're extra powerful. But they also, every time they sort of ramp up and come back, they ramp up and they stay a little stronger. So in this era, we have like the rise of another chosen of chaos. So I can't remember his name. His name isn't nearly as cool as Archaon, but I don't know, it's like some weird German thing. And so he's rising up. So the winds of magic are more powerful, but they're not as powerful as they are at the end of 8th edition. So lore-wise, we are likely to see a little power down in the overall like OP-ness, powerfulness of magic. Good. And you also, at the beginning of this setting, humans do not practice magic. So the elves,
they were taught by the elves.
Yeah, Teclis comes over and actually starts the colleges of magic. And that, as far as I can tell, and this is a little weird, as far as I can tell, that happens at what will, I assume, to be the end of the old world timeline. So the end of the old world timeline is this great war against chaos. Magnus, the Pious, rises and unites the empire again, and they ride up to Kislev, and Teclis teaches them how to use magic. And they start a school where they can all study it. And the first, head mage, who later on is Balthasar Gelt. What is that guy called? He's the come on. Anyway, doesn't matter. But so a lot of the things that like Empire's final form, as it appears in this book, really comes from the end of what I assume is the story arc of the old world. So what the Empire is at the beginning of it, all bets are off. It might not even be a single thing. Like what you said before. Maybe, what you see are 3 different factions, each with Supreme Patriarch. Thank you, Ritio Santi. Maybe you see, like a series of like same but different factions that, you can choose to LARP as. I don't know. Sorry, I blacked out.
That's okay. Don't worry. There's a lot of lore in there.
The only thing that would really be consistent that I could see giving the Empire like some of the power that they have is the Cult of Sigmar stuff and the Cult of Ulrich stuff. So the religiosity.
I think they're going to lean. That's what I was going to say. I think that they're actually going to, instead of Teclis making a school for humans who can't magic good. Thanks, Extra Midnight in the chat. I think they're going to end up because there's also some army rules that we've kind of skipped over. It's not that it's super important, but they have regiments, and those regiments kind of back each other up. And I assume they're going to lean into the religiosity of it. They're going to it's the faith, it's the prayers, and then it's going to be like the brother in arms, like regimental element, like the fact that they can construct regimented armies is going to be the point of the range. So Battle Wizard's probably not as cool, but maybe we'll see some some travelers who traveled and were learned magic somehow.
elvish allies or whatever. But like a point you brought up there too might be that like the way you differentiate the human sub factions of the empire is perhaps like where Magnus is from and like those guys. I hope his name is Magnus. I think it's Magnus the Pious. I might
Magnus
be
the
wrong.
Pious, the chat saying, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. They're the religious nutcases, and they're the ones that are imbued with the power of Sigmar. But maybe the guys from the Northwest, they're rich because they're traders, so they have like fancier gear and they're better trained. And like the Nuln folks, they have the artillery. So maybe you have more of a rock paper scissors thing going on with mechanics amongst different armies of the Empire. They don't all get everything, which is what you get in the final form. So maybe that's the way they differentiate and make it a little interesting. But in general, you're going to see less magic for these guys, and I think in the world you'll see less magic.
Okay, all right. I'm glad there's less magic because that was, I think, one of the issues. Okay, so but Battle Wizards, we might see Battle Wizards return. Okay, the Imperial Zoo is next, and I'm going to just fly through these a little bit.
Imperial Zoo.
The Imperial Zoo. Most of these were mounts that you would take on your characters, or some of them were mounts that you would take on your characters. And then we get to the Imperial Dragon, which I can't remember. So those Imperial Griffins. Never existed. That was it. So Imperial Griffins, Imperial Dragon, and then there was the Imperial Pegasi. And then they never made a sculpt for the Imperial Dragon. So we never had a wizard or a lord that you could take on an Imperial Dragon, if I'm right.
You are right, and I don't even think so, because Forge World released a series of breathtaking dragons, one of which you in fact sent me. One is called the Carmine Dragon. There were some very large ones that they did. I don't think any of them were specifically the Imperial Dragon, which is wild. This is apparently just a very big badass dragon. They got chained up somewhere under a mountain, and Karl Franz is such an alpha that he's able to just ride it. But he chooses not to. Instead, he rides his mutant double-headed Gigantor Griffin Deathclaw, and that's pretty badass too. But yeah, Pegasus though, that Pegasi, super useful. Also, if you do find yourself playing Warhammer Fantasy Battles 8th Edition, pay attention to that stat line. It is a G. We got a strength toughness of 4, 3 fucking wounds, initiative 4, 2 attacks, and it's got these hoofs that'll screw you up. Man, the Pegasus, don't sleep on it. You put your standard bearer, much like Rob loves the standard bearer on a disc of Tzeentch, so you can fly around. The Empire's got that too. It's a hero, a captain on a Pegasus with the magic item, just running around messing dudes up. Awesome.
Yeah, so this is kind of like a bestiary of mounts that you can take on heroes and characters. I expect the Griffins and the Pegasi to return, and I kind of also expect there to be some sub-factions / cities that have access to more of these, not less.
Well, yes, for sure. And like as far as dragons go, hopefully we see the High Elves and what's his face, Eltharion.
Yes.
Anyway, also Karl Franz got that BDE, Big Dragon Energy from BJT.
BDE, Big Dragon Energy. That's a new emote for the show. So write that down. Okay.
Most BDE since the Khaleesi, for sure.
Yeah. And you could take upgrades for these monsters / mounts as well. So that was another thing you were able to do.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. You could do that. Don't forget them. Ironheart Hooves was pretty dope. That was because they stomp, because they're actually that's right. They're monstrous. That's right. They're monstrous beasts. So there are different unit types. For example, you'll see over on the left there, the Griffin is a monster. A monstrous beast, though, can join a unit if it's a unit of monstrous beasts and benefit from Lookout Sir rolls, which means that they can't be picked off as easily. So Imperial Pegasi is also a bit more survivable that way, and they can hide with, say, your unit of Demigriffs, which is kind of neat. So yeah, let's keep rolling. There's a billion different things, and I got about 34 minutes, so let's ride.
Oh God.
Actually, no. I got like 45 minutes.
Okay, all right. We'll whip through. Next up, Master Engineers. So obviously, it's the Empire. So we're in a kind of it was kind of an odd level of technology. We were kind of 15th, 16th century Europe. We had black powder stuff. We kind of looked to the stars, and we could do simple math. but we also could build steam engines in steam tanks and stuff, but rudimentary. So also 18th century kind of level. So somewhere between those two.
Yeah, they kind of mix up a lot of the like tropes of steampunk, but also clockwork, like a lot of clockwork machinery type things in the Empire, and also they mix in a little bit of that 40K forgotten knowledge flavor because the Empire learned their technology from the dwarves. So the dwarves are the ones who are like the Prometheus myth of the humans. They come down from the mountains. They're like these stupid humans need some help. I can't remember why they do it, but they teach them how to make cannons. They teach them how to make the steam tank. And the stupid guy, basically the Arkan land of fantasy. I can't remember his name. It's something Da Vinci, Mirangelo Da Vinci or something like that. Is the guy who invents the steam tank. He dies, and of course it's too complicated. They can't figure out how to build them anymore. So master engineers are neat. So simultaneously, humans have very, very advanced technology, but are also a little bit confounded by it, and their technology is sort of surpasses them in a way similar to 40K, but not quite. For the most part, they are actively learning. They have a school, in Nuln where they try and figure out new gear and tech, and like they are not a ignorant people. They are actively trying to get better at this stuff. And they just can't remember how to make a steam tank for some stupid reason.
Well, he was also really good in an army because you could stick him next to a cannon and then you could say 10 from the back, lads.
So more specifically, the Hellblaster volley gun, which is just an amazing splooge of death. It is just hot molten death and really relies on being able to reroll misfires. Whereas a cannon, I don't know, your odds of being successful with a cannon without a reroll are still pretty damn good. So I don't know if you necessarily bring a master engineer, but if you have a Hellblaster volley gun, you're going to want one of those engineers there just making sure everything goes according to plan, because it's filthy what it can do.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, so now we're seeing like the commander like buffs the troops, the wizard buffs everything, the engineer specifically more orientated around war machines, and that's kind of the cool element of like these books. I thought is you ended up with these like, and again these have been explored in my opinion a lot more in like the Total War series. They've created like different little characters, heroes like that really benefit these different units, and I'd like to see those extrapolated out and put back into the old world when it comes out. Next up is warrior priests. So you have the Archlector, which is the Lord version, and then you just have warrior priests, which are the foot version. And these are the faith boys. These love a good bit of Sigmar and praying.
So one of the interesting things about fantasy in general is that you have, and this is, I think, one of the reasons why I'm not with you on the team Magic is too OP, is because Magic is a really finite resource. So basically you get mana or points by rolling your 2d6 for the Winds of Magic. So that means on average you're getting 7 dice that you can commit to roll a spell. For example, any of these prayers, in order to get them off, I believe is a 4-up. So essentially very easy to get on 2 dice, and even possible to get rolling 1 dice. But if you have 7 dice and you have an Archlector and you have a level 4 battle mage who probably has 4 spells to choose from, you suddenly have real tough economies of choice. So you don't have a lot of resources to spend on a lot of really tasty options. There's basically nothing that this guy does that isn't frigging incredible that you want to have happen every turn. But you also have a battle mage or 2 that can also do things that are friggin' amazing and you want to do every single turn. So it forces these choices that are really, really difficult and a lot of fun and melt your brain when you're trying to make them. But this warrior priest, like for example, provides ward save to everyone in his unit. On 5-up, ward save is an invulnerable or what do they call it in Sigmar? Do they have them?
We don't have ward saves. Like we do have literally the word ward save, but it's actually a feel no pain, as you would call it in 40K.
Got it. So after the save.
yeah, after the save. We always called it a DPR on the show before they called it a ward, so a damage prevention roll, because it would be whatever your armor save. But like anyway, that's a side note.
But you have like this guy can he provides hatred automatically. So if he's in the units, that means he's rerolling hits. If he's just in the unit, that is a passive, so that he doesn't require anything to do that. But he can also make the unit reroll wounds. So you can see how suddenly you're like derpy dudes in pantaloons and pirate shirts are suddenly getting pretty beastly with just one very religious guy nearby. And then the one that's particularly awesome and was wonderful for me in a matchup I played against trolls who are sensitive to fire is Soulfire. So anything around him is granted flaming attacks, which meant my Hellblaster volley guns and cannons that he happened to be standing next to also had flaming attacks, and I was able to just murder his trolls. And he was like, "I've never seen anyone do this before," and I was like, "Internet baby, woo!"
Woo!
But
Yeah,
and
I
then
think
to just polish this all off, this guy standing in a unit is good, but then you get an Arc Lector, the Lord level of this guy, and he stands on this sick friggin' chariot thing with a giant golden griffin. I don't know if anyone hasn't seen it, but like it doesn't exist anymore. It's so beautiful. I accidentally bought 3, and you only ever need 1. I'm just stupid. And it's incredible, and that gives him a bubble of 6 inches where all of this stuff happens. So now you can start seeing how we got a little stew going here. This guy in the middle of all of your junk dudes is going to turn them into some whipped up, frenzied nutcases who just love Sigmar so much they want to crush.
Yeah, I think we will see this come back in strength, in my opinion. Personally, also I really liked it because you got to run like more of a paladin-esque character while also being quite clearly like out of your mind as a zealot. So like it's quite a cool like archetype of a kind of character to build into. There were loads of different sculpts, which was really, really fun. And yeah, like I would like to see them push that element of the Empire personally, because and importantly, several of the Empire actually pray to different gods. So like
it's almost identical to 40k. You've got the wolf god. Well, I guess 40k also has the machine god. I guess. Well, I wonder if there is a third god. There probably are, isn't there? This is maybe a piece I'm ignorant about it. Do you know of other gods aside from Ulrich and Sigmar?
Ulrich, Sigmar. I don't know if I do actually. But maybe the chat.
I feel like the lady on the dragon that you gave me. I feel like she's part of another cult.
Apparently there are 9.
Well,
says Garion in the chat.
God damn.
There's
there you go. So
Shalier's healing, Tal. So maybe what we'll end up with is a god per sub-faction city potentially. Like,
and you wind up with the one god to rule them all because monotheism and shit.
Yes. Oh, so not only will it be a civil war, it'll be a religious civil war. Great theme.
I can see that.
Okay.
I can see that.
Okay, that's pretty fun. Okay, next up we got witch hunters.
Yeah.
And obviously these are fun. The sculpts are great, and then they're very like the art for this one is particularly fantastic. And I mean, vampires were very real. A vampire was literally one of the counts in the Empire, or wanted to be a count in the Empire.
I love the lore too around that. It's just like he's just got a lot of like giving off a lot of vampire vibes, and everyone's just like, nah, man, he's a night owl. He just likes a party. No, he's not a vampire.
Yeah. Right.
Can you scroll up just a half a second? I just want to look at some of the crunch here.
Okay.
Magic resistance 2. That's why you take a witch hunter.
Because when you put him in a unit, he gave the unit magic resistance 2.
Which basically gives you a 5-up ward save against damage caused from magic attacks. So it doesn't save you against everything, but he wasn't shit, actually, Astugin 1. You see the Witch Hunter weasel into tournament lists fairly frequently. Not like as he's a neat piece of tech, some of which would be beyond me. But certainly the Witch Hunter doesn't not exist. There are some things that just don't exist, and the Witch Hunter isn't one of them.
Yeah, okay. The bit to kind of point out now that Val's pointed out twice is that actually having these characters in or, importantly, attached to units granted you a buff. And I think that we're going to continue to see that in whatever the old world brings out. I think you're probably not going to get because obviously 40k and Sigmar, they do a lot of like aura stuff. But if you take something like Game of Thrones, what they do is they have it that you attach a hero to a unit. And then and I think we'll see that return, and so like you're effectively upgrading a unit via a character,
Yeah, so that's exactly right, and this is also the era of GW rules writing known as Death Stars. So you would have specifically the real baddies of the meta would have been, your Warriors of Chaos Death Stars, and very much so high elves. So your Phoenix Guard, basically unkillable mother effers, especially if you had any magic for various reasons. So, excuse me. So like the ability to pack rule upon rule upon rule onto like one unit, making them ultra efficient. This is a very core thing of games design that maybe it was unintended consequences, or I'm not sure. So guys like this could be a useful little piece of tech that you might splash in places, because it's also pretty cheap too.
Yeah. Oh, Brett's certainly saying it's also the same with Conquest of the Last Age of Kings, which is another ranked fantasy battle game. So maybe maybe it just feels like if you're doing a ranked game, because how do you put heroes in? Auras are a little bit difficult. So maybe that's just kind of like a very tried and tested method of attaching buffs. So Witch Hunter, I mean, I like that. I would like to see the Witch Hunter have some anti-vampire stuff, if that's going to be a thing that continues.
So auras exist full stop in this game system, like no doubt. Like and Empire especially benefits from auras, and they get wacky because they exist, but they don't really get addressed. That was actually, I don't know if you remember, when 8th edition Fantasy 40K came out, they actually described what an aura was, and this is like finding the Dead Sea Scrolls. Like people like were in great disagreement over like the actual definitions and limits of auras. Like for example, if you put a unit with an aura inside of a building, does the aura work? Rules is written in this. You have to sort of take a guess based on what happens when you put ranged units in a building. So like you have to kind of infer what might happen with something that has an area of effect. So yeah, there's weird clunkiness in the rules there. That's just a result of poor clarity and no FAQ for some stupid reason.
Yeah, it's odd. Okay, so getting on to the big guy. Well, I mean the kind of troops. So you did have troops. You had heroes and lords, which we talked about, and then you ended up with troops, and then you had rares and exotic.
Yeah, troops were core. Yeah, troops are core, and then you would have special, and then you would have rare. And so based on so you could have as many core as you liked, but you had to have a minimum of 25% of your points spent on core, which actually is really not that hard for Empire. You can go heavy cavalry. You can go, a block or two of halberdiers. They're strength 4, and with all the buffing stuff that we just described, kind of the no-brainer option. You might have some arguments for swordsmen. Spearmen, definitely hard no, even though they fight in more ranks. Essentially, what you were looking at here is halberdiers, and big bricks of them, buffed by a lot of the dudes we just talked about.
So yeah, you would have a bunch of guys, right? And then because they're just your regular human dudes, and these are definitely going to make it. Like I expect to see arch-lectors, witch hunters, priests, wizards. We're actually putting a question mark over, which is actually not something I was expecting at the start of the show. I wasn't thinking question mark over wizards for
nope.
For the
I
Empire.
think almost virtually guaranteed no wizards. I'd say the timeline that they're hinting at predates Imperial wizardry. Doesn't exist.
That's right.
So.
That's right.
Maybe
cool.
You'll have characters, like you said, like maybe who like have some magical taste, but I would bet that they're more focused on religious zealotry. I think that's a pretty good insight.
That's interesting. Well, and now we're moving on to so these are this is what you're definitely going to be painting a lot of, either blue and purple, orange and gold, double green, who knows? But like your state troops or your infantry, and there are other units as well. But I think these are going to be. Do you think that do you think the old sculpts hold up? Do you think that we're going to see these old sculpts return? That's the kind of big question for me.
The state troop, I think, still exists.
It does still exist. It exists in Age Sigmar.
Yeah, so there are some other kits, too, that were just yanked for no reason that are awesome. The Archer Sculpt is actually really awesome. That's another unit, by the way, that you would see as a detachment on its own, because they're good as chaff. So chaff is very important in 8th edition. The ability to sort of speed bump or redirect charges and things like that. So archers are exceptional at that. They're skirmishing and things like that. But yeah, I could see them getting away with kind of letting this army be while they addressed. Yeah, well, for a little bit, because I love the fact that they are one of the number one thing I'm interested in AOS is goblins, which I have. By the way, I have a big old Gloomspite Gates list army that you got to help me build something out of. So I can try AOS.
They're quite good now.
They're very good from what I understand. So I've been waiting. But outside of that, there's no like the human faction was just sort of all of the junk that they couldn't, they didn't think that they could think of something cool to do with. So now that they're actually designing Cities of Sigmar to be something of its own in that universe, that kind of frees up the sort of Renaissance fair humans to either be the core of Old World or be sort of maybe you get an updated sculpt like you did say with the Cadians over in Dadbot Napgod.
Oh, thanks for donating 5 gift subscriptions, Dad Barn. I think he's excited about the old world. That's super nice of you, especially to my friend Tom in the chat. Lovely. Thanks, bud.
That's really sweet. So anyway, I think this army has a lot of sculpts that were newish, so like that were sort of had been revisited. You might maybe see like their heavy cav get revisited quickly because they're kind of static. But yeah, the core, it's fine. It's fine. Also depends on what they do with the scale. Like do they increase, bring it more in line with the way the core systems are being designed, which is kind of a more straight up 32 millimeter style. Or do they shrink it? Do they keep it more proportioned 28 millimeter? It'd be interesting to see what design choices they make to sort of differentiate the line from others. But the way 8th edition ended was with actually a lot of the armies being updated top to bottom, almost all plastic kits.
What? So someone's donated. So Dagger D3 has donated 5 gift subscriptions as well. Oh my God! Wow! Old World love in the chat. Let's go. Thank you. Let's go.
The Old World smell. I appreciate it.
Oh, episode 3 of the Old World. Getting it going. All right.
That is beautiful. Get in here. Get on the Old World train. We still know the technology to how to build the steam train that drives the Old World. Don't worry, guys. Exactly. It's coming out every week. So anyway, we've waxed poetic a lot here, but essentially in an 8th edition context, you kind of had 2 units you'd see from here. Plus, we're going to see the knightly orders in a minute. That's probably what else you would see drawing from your core.
Okay, yeah, and there were halberdiers, there were swordsmen. I think that these were some of I think these were evocative. I think one of the things Warhammer Fantasy Battle did really well is its core troops, so the troops you had to take as part of your army, which I like. A lot of people call them attacks, but I actually think that they really gave you some sort of idea of what the army was meant to look like. I liked it. Like it was good.
Yes.
Yeah.
We were talking about collectability, or at least I was referencing collectibility before, and that I think was big. The core units were iconic for every single army.
Yes.
I don't think there's an army where the core unit you're like, no. They're all sick AF. Every single one of them. Love them. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you to Harry266 for resubscribing as well. Okay, so halberdiers. I liked the swordsman because I like the shield, even if they weren't a good choice.
So shield gives you a parry save in combat, so that would be the argument for swordsman.
I don't mean mechanically. I mean,
you just like the look. All right,
I just think it's cool.
All right, I'll shut up.
Like, no, I just think a shield is a cool. Like, it's got the heraldry. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm on that.
Yeah. Halberds have shields too, though.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I don't think you can have shields with halberds, can you?
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Oh, all right. Okay.
Yeah. It helps you as you're getting there. I don't think I'm pretty sure halberd's a 2-handed weapon. I don't know if you can use it. You can't use it in combat, but it helps you with your armor save all the way across the board. But that doesn't matter.
That doesn't matter because that won't be in the game.
Free Company Militia are so sick. These are like swashbuckling dudes. They can basically be whatever you want them to be. They can just be rabble, townsfolk. They can be. These are based actually on the Mordheim gang sprue, basically.
What, the Free Company Militia?
Yeah.
Nice.
As a result, one of the most valuable kits right now. If you're sitting on a stash of Free Company Militia. Or Huntsman, the Archer kit, both of those sell well above what their original retail value was because people love playing Mordheim, and every time someone builds a Mordheim group, there's one less kit out there to do it with. So yeah, if you're sitting on any of Free Company Militia, go on eBay and sell them before they get replaced, before they re-release Mordheim. Which they probably should have done years ago.
Yes, and maybe around that time that they did that game that was literally Mordheim, which we played, like whatever it was called.
The AOS version of Mordheim.
Dark Tide.
Oh, Dark Tide. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That would have probably been good.
By the way, the same thing. Anyway, and then you had Huntsman as well. So like these are like I don't remember anyone ever taking the Free Company Militia, but maybe I'm not correct.
this is another one too where Total War, if I could interject, Total War might make these cooler because in Total War they have handguns or like some sort of ranged
huntsman.
element to them.
Yeah,
The Free Company militia.
Oh,
so
okay.
when you get close of Free Company, they can actually they can blast you. Whereas in this game they're just sort of generic
Dudes.
guys that again could be used as chaff or whatever. Huntsmen are expensive archer. That's why you never see them. Wolf. Another awesome Warhammer 2 character, Wolfric. Wolfric? No. What the hell's his name? Anyway, he's essentially an imperial conquistador, and he's got his merry band of huntsmen, and they can come on the board edge at a random time for way too many points, and no one uses him. However, because he was a character that was released in 8th edition that no one ever used, Marcus Wolfhart, and so therefore no one ever bought. One of the rarest minis you could possibly find these days. So again, if you got a Marcus Wolfhart, if you're sitting on maybe a box of it, you bought it and you put it in the closet, hop on eBay, you could probably get $300 for it. Yeah,
it's what you mean. Yeah.
No. You sell that on eBay and you do it as fast as you can, guys. If you're sitting on any new in-box fantasy stuff, I am saying right now, listen to me. Sell it now.
To us.
Sell.
For pennies.
No, we don't need new in-box stuff. You just sell it to collectors.
Okay. I don't think you're getting the
all
point
this shit
of the
will get
show,
re-released.
Val, but it's outrageous. We're not getting any free
I don't want to
stuff from GW.
I don't want to rob our. They can gift subs with the money that they get from reselling all of these collectibles.
Okay, that's fair. So huntsmen could also be skirmishers, and like you alluded to, so they're like not only did you have there was a bunch of different unit types, right? You had monsters. You talked about this earlier. You had monsters. You had cavalry. You had troops. You had skirmishers. They all
monstrous cavalry.
Yeah, monstrous cavalry, and they all kind of did slightly different things. They had their own universal special rules or USRs. So huntsmen were in there as well. Let's just go on to a badass unit, the great swords. Now these were not core, right?
They were not core. I do not think so. I do not think they were core.
I think these were
they were special. Yes, they're special.
They're special. So these are fully plated, Zweihander wielding, big hatted. I love the artwork. The artwork is great because it's full armor, absolutely across the whole thing. And then they're like, helmet? They're like, fuck no. Giant fancy hat. Yeah.
Fuck you, pussy. I'm not putting a helmet on. I got these feathers. So, yeah, the great swords are interesting. So I think depending on the moment of the edition, they were either a plus unit or they weren't. And I think some people continued to, if you read forums right now, sort of your casual tryhard will probably still think great swords are good. I could never see a world where I'm bringing great swords as much as I think they're awesome. I just don't. I don't think you're. I think you're just better off with halberdiers and other stuff. It's just. But they're awesome. They're also stubborn, so they don't run away. They're a really grindy unit, and they are so incredibly handsome. I really genuinely love them, and I think they're cool AF for sure.
These will definitely return. These are iconic.
Absolutely, and this is a good example, I think, of a unit that might be, specific to a a certain region of the empire, right? Where one region maybe has particularly great sword, the greatest great swords.
The greatest swords. Yeah. Okay. All right. That's fun. I like that. Yeah. I think we'll see. Well, they did say that there's the Carborg great swords in the flavor text. Were one of the most famous regiments of the empire with tales of their valor. So you might see upgrade kits for that specific unit. It really depends how deep they go with it. If it's just like a splash game release and they don't, but there's the, like you say, not only was there the wealth of the 30 years of before they destroyed the old world, there's everything that game developers, the RPG people, and Total War have done since to flesh out. Even though they had to cancel it because they were trapped in a tiny box.
It's too small. I can't create here. I can't create here. I need more space. I need more dimensions. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, guys.
The next unit, and these are definitely going to see a return, in my opinion, are Flagellants.
Flagellants are so. These are one of those units where you wish they were good, and in some editions they really were good. I think they kind of suffered from that, the reverse, the sort of the nerf where maybe a few editions before this Flagellants were good. but in this game they're not. But this is again an example of a model that you do not have to update. Like these guys are friggin' awesome. They're awesome. I've got 40 of them. I don't know if I'd ever use them, but they are just one of my favorite. These are one of my favorite models going back to the day. I had a bunch of the original pewter versions of these guys, the original metal dudes, and the plastic kit that exists is just so great. It's great too for if you ever want to make cool like 40k Imperial zealots and stuff. Like this kit is incredible.
Yeah, so if you're interested in what they look like, they're effectively like semi-naked religious nutcases with flails. They even had like their own like a couple of special like universal special rules applied to them. They did like a whole thing if they took damage and stuff. Like it's super fun unit. Like I expect those to return, especially if I expect there to be a city that's even more puritanical and fanatical than another city, and have even more Flagellants.
And so like the idea behind these guys is that they're unbreakable because they're just seeking death for the glory of Sigmar. They're frenzied, so they have extra attacks and they can't really control their charges very well. And then they have this thing where if they sacrifice a couple dudes, they might get bonuses to themselves. But the funny thing about that is when you actually look at the math involved in giving themselves bonuses, it rarely happens that they get a very good bonus. And then on top of all that, they don't have an armor save, so they just sort of melt away. And the purpose of them is that they, like Slayers and Dwarves, is that they go, and if they just touch a unit, they're not going anywhere. And that's sort of what they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be a unit that is just hard to chew through. Unfortunately, they're just very easy to chew through.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense, right? They're naked. So then we get on to now. Like this is weird. This is a weird bit. Bretonnia horsemen. I get it. Yeah, knights, heraldry, and then we just had a lot more kind of like line horsemen. So the knightly orders. So these are your cavalry, your standard dude on a horse in full plate or armor doing the charge. Was a thing. It's kind of odd because, like you said, like they learnt war machines from dwarfs, they learnt magic from elves. The Empire kind of stand out because of their infantry in a lot of ways, in my opinion. And then the knightly orders always felt like a bit like, oh, and these guys,
and also these very heavy mounted cavalry. Yeah. So I guess, and the history on this is a little bit lost to me, but if the Knights of Bretonnia are your sort of Norman conquest era, actually it's the reverse of that, because it's
like, isn't it like 8th century?
Asian court is when the knights get pelted by British.
1066. No, way before.
1066 is when they come across. So if you're sort of like heavy plate but like flowing barded dudes with your 1040. That would be your Bretonians. These to me feel like your late medieval. I might get shot with a musket. You can see like the very sharp lines that are more for like the armor is built to deflect. So this is sort of a late era version of plate armor, I would say. Something that's more contemporaneous with the vague time era placement of Empire. So yeah, whereas Bretonnia is actually an older style of mounted knight. These guys would probably be your sort of very late heavy armor knight, that you might see 100 Years of War-ish when, you had blunderbusses and shit.
I think, so Wolford's saying Bretonnia is 100 Years War, and then Empire was the War of the Roses. So later when we ended up having some black powder shot. Cavalry, interesting. Like a lot of the game was designed around like hitting straight lines and then charging in flanks if possible. I never found that cavalry were like crazy fast, which I thought was kind of interesting. They just kind of moved a bit faster.
So
go on.
From like an army design perspective, like if you're building a list, especially later Empire armies would become actually like all heavy cav. So like they would spend all their points on just a big Death Star of heavy horse, and then elsewhere. And that gave your core troops very high survivability because unlike Bretonians, these guys have a 1-up save. So that means that just dressed as they are, they you need to get at least a -2 modifier on their armor save before they're rolling worse than 2 up to save themselves. The downside, of course, is that they have 1 wound, and that's why maybe people are reluctant to sink a lot of points into them. But eventually, I think people see the efficiency of just a big brick of 2-up save things that you can also buff with other characters that you bring with them. You can give them, maybe you throw in, not an Arc Lector, but like a warrior priest, or my favorite guy, Luther Hess, and suddenly, they've got, 5-up ward too if they get something off. So they become very much like a core. As the meta develops, you move away from halberdiers. I don't know what the fish is that starts to eat the other things, like those big bricks of infantry. I don't know what that big fish is, but you definitely see it in the list designs as you get towards the end of the edition.
Do you think we'll see the cavalry come back, like in old
100%,
world?
yes,
100%.
yes.
Okay.
And this to me is a kit ripe for a redesign as well. The existing models are very static. They're one of the originally designed plastic kits. They strike me as something that was actually hand sculpted and then adapted to a plastic sprue. So you have those sprues with a lot of empty space on them. It's not a tremendous amount of detail. You could see Imperial Knights, Empire knightly orders come back, but with a lot more detail, akin to what you see with Demigriff Knights.
Well, so there's also a couple of. I expect also there to be different knightly orders as well. Like we got the Reichsguard Knights, which they go through, and then I expect there to be loads of different knightly orders. If we do, I'm actually kind of excited about like that in Empire-based Civil War, if that's what we end up with, because you could be you could very much collect a set of miniatures and be like, oh my god, I'm definitely gonna be from Tamerland, and then the other one would be like, oh, I'm gonna be a bit of a Nuln guy today, which is cool. If they do that, that's super
Agreed.
fun.
And Estugan won Dark Elves and Demons just invalidated infantry in the last third of 8th edition. Thank you. That would make a lot of sense. So the Dark Elves have repeater bolt guns, repeater bolt throwers, can bring them in mass. They can just melt anyone away. So suddenly having that 1-up armor save, very, very important. So there you go. That's the big fish that killed off the blocks of halberdiers, even though I still love them.
So then going into special, we ended up with Demigriff Knights, which
contentious.
Were they? Well, importantly, pretty cool models. I remember, so I looked at the artwork and I very much liked the artwork and the minis, but the minis did not hold up. I kind of revisited the minis at one point. I was like, actually, hate these.
Really?
I thought, yeah, I don't know why. I think that the body was too small.
On the there's a Forge World Demigriff that you actually shared, and he's way bigger. This is sort of like the same thing that happens with the Rhinox.
Yes.
With the ogres, they shrink him down, I think, to make him a little bit more playable. But the bigger thing about the Demigriff is that the monstrous cavalry unit type was something that they kind of brought in. I don't know if they existed in 7th. I think they started existing when ogres come, because you get monstrous infantry and monstrous cavalry. I think
the ogres had the first monstrous cavalry, and I think these happened after.
But then basically what happens is every army gets, almost every army, looking at you dwarves, and Bretonnians, Bretonnians have Pegasus. Anyway, gets a unit of monstrous cavalry, which immediately make regular cavalry pale in comparison, except for in this case, regular cavalry in the Empire book, they are core. So it's a way to build out your core points. You're not going to see many Imperial armies that don't have Demigriff Knights, though. They are really, really good units. Just absolutely amazing flankers. I love them.
Good. All right. Yeah, I like the Demigriff Knights. I think they're great. So then we've got, again, more cav. You've gone and got the Pistoliers and the Outriders.
Just what a kit. Beautiful kit. One of my favorite, most evocative kits. I love these guys.
But I think it also showed its age now.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're cool. Don't get me wrong, but I think the sculpting on the blunderbusters especially definitely could. I think they definitely could do some redesign on these personally.
Again, maybe it's just because I live in an 8th edition world now that to me the Pistolier kit is beautiful, and also I compare it to the original Pistolier kit, which was just 2 versions of a guy on a horse. So I don't know. I still love them. Whether or not that means they're good, who knows? But in the game, Pistoliers again had play. I think in earlier metas. By the time you're getting to the late edition, 8th, not really seeing them much. The Outriders, who are guys with basically little submachine guns, they suffer from the inability to move and fire essentially. But if you got them in position and used them right, they just like would unleash hell, and they were a ton of fun. So I think both of these
broken in Total War. These guys.
Yes. I love both of these units, and these are a type of unit that, even though they may not be the best choice, these are units that I will struggle to find a way to play with because I think they're so much fun. So there you go. And I think they look great. So
yeah. So they're archer cavalry, effectively. For people who are wondering, but they've got black powder weapons, so and very, very fun to use in Total War. Very fun. Next up is the good old War Altar of Sigmar, which we already touched on anyway.
Yeah, massive buff.
It was just a mount, right? Am I thinking right?
It's a chariot. Yeah, it's a chariot mount.
Yeah. So it wasn't something you could take on its own.
No, I think it had to be an Arc Lector's mount, if I recall correctly.
Yeah. So, but
the other ones, they have other weird chariots that are also buffing chariots that were rare choices.
Yes, well, the Luminarch and also the Hurricanum.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Which still exist.
They still exist and are very much in use.
However, in the Age of Sigmar, the Altar of Sigmar, for some reason, doesn't exist.
Yeah, which is funny because it does look like from some of the early artwork that they're definitely bringing back like crusading style war altars. So I don't know if it's not making a return, if I'm honest. But they've done a piece of artwork where these crusades are going out because that's what the new book is going to be. And they look like they've got these mounts, chariots, things. They look insane. So
the Luminarch and the Hurricanum, virtually assured, will not exist in Old World. Certainly not in a supported fashion that is germane. Like, they might do a thing where they release, legended rules that work with the rule set, maybe at when they first drop. I don't know. That's a speculation, but I think they will, based on how they said you can use the toys you have. So maybe there will be some generic rules for everything that existed up to this point. But again, lore-wise, the Luminarch and the Hurricanum would be things created by the schools of magic. They just don't exist in this timeline. Oh. However, this bad boy, certainly could exist. Although I'm not sure. This might be. I'm pretty sure the Arc Lector exists in this era. I don't know. Someone else might be able to tell me. Yeah. So if one of the altars exists, the War Altar of Sigmar will. It's also one of the oldest and most iconic Empire models. This thing has had 2 or 3 different versions over the years.
Okay, interesting that we won't see the return of the others. That's actually pretty hot. Artillery, cannons.
Hell yeah.
Hellblaster volley gun.
Yep.
In here, and the Hellstorm rocket battery, and then also mortars. I forgot about the mortars. So
Humble mortar. 4
different types of artillery. I think all of them could potentially see a return.
Probably not the rocket launcher, I would bet. The rocket battery just strikes me as sort of a newer thing, and I don't know what the timeline on the Hellblaster is. Those both feel like newish Empire innovations. Maybe you'll see like a prototypical version of them or something like that. But again, I don't know quite when the Imperial gunners figure that stuff out. But rocket batteries, if you know Total War, are just these devastating engines of death. They're amazing. In fantasy, that level of destructive power would have been too much. So they were dialed back. Both mortars and Hellstorm rocket batteries were dialed back a lot in 8th edition and basically taken out of the game. They don't really
did template
exist.
Damage. So like they were doing template, so you would scatter. So there was the whole joy of the template thing, which set to make a return.
Hellblasters though, and great cannons, tremendous amount of play. Certainly great cannons in every single list, and then you're gonna. Most people would try to find a way to get Hellblaster in. Probably too much variance for like a real gamer. And the point sink to give it less variation into the Imperial Engineer. Again, probably a negative on the Hellblaster. Competing in the rare choice on top of all of that, which has got tons of great stuff for Empire. So Hellblaster is something that you want to have. Something that you have to want to get into your list. But the cannon, just a stock choice. You're at least bringing 1, probably 2.
Because monsters were very susceptible to cannon fire. And if you didn't deal with a monster via cannon fire, it was going to eat your face. A lot of the time.
Really any sort of points dense, wound rich, anything that had a lot of points and wound density. So multi-wound, expensive units like Monstrous Cavalry, for example. Those are ogres in general. Quite susceptible to cannonballs dropping on them. They're real all-rounders, and they're also, because of the way the rules are written, you can snipe dudes with them pretty good. So yeah, they are one of the things.
Yeah, I think
I'm getting ready to go.
Okay, I think we'll call it there. We'll call it there for today. Steam tanks maybe won't return. Luminarchs. I think actually we got to the end. Carl Franz. We got loads of characters to talk about. We'll do that on next week's show. Let's do Empire Take 2 next week. Shall we do that?
Absolutely.
Perfect. If everyone enjoyed the Old World show, thanks for tuning in. See you soon.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. I'll see you soon.